Welcome to Prepare to Survive, the first ever episode of Pinellas County's new E-Series presentations. I'm your host, Tom Iovino of the Pinellas County Communications Department. For the next 15 minutes or so, we'll cover what you need to know about preparing for disasters. You can enter your question in our E-Series by visiting www.pinellascounty.org/E-Series. Questions meeting our terms of participation will be posted, and if we don't get to your question, please leave us your email so we can respond. Joining us today is Lynne McChristian of the Insurance Information Institute to talk all things insurance on this, the first day of hurricane season 2011. Lynne, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Lynne, how was your first day of hurricane season?
Well, it's calm. We got some rain, and it lets you know at least that rainy season has started. Rainy season equals hurricane season.
And we know what comes up with you to get the summer rains and then you start to get storms. Lynne, here we are on day one of hurricane season. Why should people be thinking about their insurance policies on day one of the season?
Well, people buy an insurance policy, and most people don't take the time to read it. And it's really important. It's a contract that you paid for, and you really need to make sure that you're comfortable, that you have the right amount of coverage, and that you know what you bought and how it's going to work. And you won't know that unless you sit down and read the contract.
Really? So it's just that basic? Is first step is to just sit down and read what you've got, right?
Well, and here's the thing is people look at that insurance policy, and sometimes it's 25, 30 pages, and they think that that might be a daunting task. And because it's a contract, it's got some legal language in it that may be confusing. But at the minimum, there's two sections that people need to read. The first pages of the insurance contract are called important messages, and you need to read those because they're
important.
So if people read the important messages, the thing that's real interesting is there's a couple of sections in the important message that are really big type. And it's really big type because it's really important. And one of the things on that page that's in big type, it says that your policy does not cover flood damage. And the Office of Insurance Regulation, the state regulators require insurance companies to put that in the contract in big type because it's important and you really need to give serious thought to flood insurance.
So Lynne, you're telling me that your basic homeowner's policy that you have in place should there ever be a fire or some other loss at your home doesn't cover flood?
It doesn't cover flood, and a lot of people think that the homeowner's insurance policy covers flood, but it hasn't covered flood since the 1960s. Flood coverage is available in a separate policy from the National Flood Insurance Program. That's the federal government program. And here's the other thing, Tom, about flood insurance. If I wanted it to start tomorrow, that's not going to be possible. What happens is when you talk to your insurance agent, you can buy flood insurance from your regular agent. When you get flood insurance, it doesn't take effect until 30 days after you send in the payment. There's a 30-day waiting period. So you can't wait until we have torrential rains and decide that's the day you want a policy.
Now, Lynne, we're talking floods. I mean, my house isn't in a flood zone. Now, why on earth would I go out and buy a flood policy?
Well, you know what, Tom? Everybody lives in a flood zone. It's just different levels of security, of safety. As last time I checked, there were no mountains in Florida. So unless you live on a mountaintop, you wouldn't need flood then. But here's the thing that's real interesting. 25% of floods happen in areas that are considered low risk. Now, I think that's a pretty high number. So if you look at that, you can go to a website, a real interesting website, www.floodsmart.gov. That's floodsmart.gov, and you can plug in your zip code, and it will let you know what your flood risk is. It's a very helpful, free website, but at least you'll get an idea, and you'll also get an idea of how much flood insurance costs, and you might say that for the peace of mind, it's worth it.
And when you don't live in a high-risk flood zone, it's not that expensive when you think about it.
It's not. I mean, I don't live in a flood zone, and my policy is about $300 a year. But the reason I have flood is, number one, I want to make sure I'm protected. But the other thing is, all throughout Florida, we have these inland lakes and these retention ponds. And if we get a lot of rain, that can overflow, and that's flood damage.
That's something to think about. Even if you're not near the beach, I mean, you're still subject to the possibility of flood. Lynn, let's talk about the insurance policy itself and your typical homeowner's policy. We talk about, one of the things we hear a lot about when we go out to talk are about the premiums. People say, well, my premium's so high. Is there anything I can do to reduce my premium? What are some of the things people can do?
Well, the one thing that they can do is take the highest deductible that you feel you can afford. Some people used to have a $500 deductible, and that's pretty low. You're not going to file an insurance claim for $500 or $1,000. So maybe you can say, what I want my deductible to be at $2,000. But another thing, Tom, is that most insurance policies, all insurance policies actually, they have a hurricane deductible, a separate deductible for hurricane damage.
Okay. And
if your home is valued at $100,000 or more, the minimum hurricane deductible is 2%. 2% of the insured value of that policy.
So that means with a $100,000 home, it would be a $2,000 deductible.
$2,000 deductible. Now, if you're comfortable, you may say, you know what? I'm lucky, I feel lucky, I'm going to make my hurricane deductible 5%. Or maybe you say you want to have it 10%. You have that option, which you will know about if you read your policy. But if you choose that, you have to have a plan for coming up with that deductible, because that has to be paid before your insurance kicks in.
Okay. Now, Lynn, there are other parts of this insurance policy as well. For instance, there are other kinds of coverage that are added. For instance, I know of one that's been brought up to my attention before called law and ordinance coverage. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yes, if your home has been built before the stronger building codes went in, which is like 2002.
Okay.
If your home was built before 2002, chances are it's not built up to the stronger building codes. And if your home was severely damaged or destroyed by anything, it doesn't have to be a hurricane, by any calamity, you would have to rebuild it to the current codes. And that requires extra coverage. And building ordinance and law coverage, you can get up to 50% more or 25% more to make sure you can rebuild your home up to that code. And it's not that much more expensive. You should talk to your insurance company to find out the difference, but it will give you the money you need to rebuild.
Again, we have to go back and read that insurance policy. That's an important piece of the puzzle, I guess.
That's right.
One of the things also, when we talk a lot about homeowners coverage, what about people who rent? I mean, we have a number of people in the area who rent. What kind of coverage is available for somebody who rents a place?
Well, renter's insurance is quite affordable, but many people don't get it because I think sometimes they don't think they have enough stuff to rent. But you know what? We completely underestimate how much stuff we have. And there's some software that we have at the Insurance Information Institute that might be really helpful. It's free software, and it's called, you can get it at www.knowyourstuff.org.
Know Your Stuff. Okay, knowyourstuff.org.
Know Your Stuff. And when you add up all the things you have, think about your clothing, your housewares, your television, your computer. That's more stuff than you realize. And too often we hear about people who don't have renters. I think that the last time I saw a statistic, only about 40% of renters have a renter's insurance policy. So it's very important for renters to do this. And some renters' insurance policies also cover flood damage.
Oh, really? So,
yes.
And now, I mean, this is, you mentioned a lot of things like computers that are typically extras in a home, but I mean, even your clothing or your furniture is susceptible to damage as a renter. So it's definitely, it's something to think about as well.
That's right. And you underestimate that. And the thing is when you have renter's insurance, you are in control about how much you want to get for your contents. But it's really important to get you back on your feet and to make sure you can be made whole again.
Okay.
And Tom, you talk about renters, the apartment complex or the, condo complex, they have insurance on their structure, but they do not insure your stuff.
Okay, so basically they're going to repair the building, but your stuff is on your own.
You're on your own. True.
Now, Lynn, we got a question from Dan. He asks, are there decent insurance policies available for Pinellas County homeowners in non-evacuation areas other than Citizens? What other options are there besides Citizens Insurance?
Well, there are some other companies that are writing, and a place to go to check to find out who is writing new business is to go to the Office of Insurance Regulation website. they have some lists on there that will tell you who is writing business. And quite frankly, as people know, the opportunities, the places to shop for coverage are limited in Florida. This is a very hard state to do business in because rates, I know people think that they pay a lot for the insurance, and the fact is this is the riskiest state in the U.S. We have more catastrophe losses in Florida than almost the next 2 states combined.
Wow.
So that's why we have such an issue with insurance.
No, Lynn, we're talking about, home dwelling insurance, for either a home or an apartment or a condominium. What about your vehicle? I mean, something like that, if there's a storm, the tree blows down onto it. We saw a lot of that back in March when we had the tornado come through. What kind of insurance policy covers your vehicle in the event that something happens to it?
Well, if you have a comprehensive coverage for your automobile, that would cover anything hitting your car, trees and of that nature. What some people do is they say, well, I don't want comprehensive, my car's not worth it. But in a hurricane, that comprehensive coverage is very important. Oh, and Tom, I should mention to Dan, who was looking for some information.
Okay.
If he could find, he should look for an independent insurance agent, and that independent agent will tell him who's writing in Pinellas.
Oh,
That's
okay.
an option for him to look for coverage. But no, auto insurance, comprehensive coverage is something that will take care of it. And flood damage is usually covered under the comprehensive auto policy.
So trees into cars, flooding, things along those lines are all covered under the comprehensive plan.
That's true.
Interesting. Yes. Now, Lynn, we like to go out, we like to talk to people about preparing their homes, shuttering their windows, repairing their garage door, replacing their garage door, bracing their roofs. Are there any discounts to people if they do some of these mitigation things in advance of a storm?
Yes, there is. Most insurance companies offer some discounts if you take steps to make your home stronger against hurricane damage. But every company does it a little bit different. It's kind of their marketing advantages. Some companies will give you a discount on your insurance if you put in a hurricane-rated garage door.
Okay.
Other companies may say you've got to protect all your windows and doors, all your openings. So it depends on what individual companies want to do. But any measures you can take, the place to start, you start with that garage door because it's your biggest opening. Mm-hmm. And the next thing to do is to really look at tying down that roof. Because if the wind comes through any of your openings, it can take that roof and then you've got a whole heck of a lot of trouble.
You're right. That sounds like sound advice, whether we're talking about insurance or just general preparedness. Lynn,
right.
We're coming down to our last few minutes here. We're here at the first part of hurricane season. What do you want to tell our viewers? Is there anything else you want to tell our viewers that's really important that they need to know about for insurance this year?
Well, I think a couple of things. One thing is to make sure they read their policy and talk to their insurance company or their insurance agent every year to make sure that they're properly covered. And to not confuse the real estate value of your home with the cost of insuring it. The real estate value, we're in a depressed economy. If you are trying to get insurance for the real estate value, you're going to be underinsured. It's all about the cost to rebuild, and it costs more to rebuild than it costs to buy a home in this economic climate right now. So, and there's resources, Tom. One thing to look at is insuringflorida.org.
Okay.
All kinds of questions for preparedness. And another place to look at is disastersafety.org. That site gives you tips on how to harden your home so that you'll be safer. And some of those tips are very, very low cost.
Great. Lynn, I want to thank you so much for coming in today. We're out of time, but definitely we look forward to talking to you again, maybe in a future episode.
Anything I can do to help people prepare, it's my pleasure.
And thank you very much, Lynn.
Thanks.
And if you'd like to see a repeat of this presentation or read the questions that were submitted, visit www.pinellascounty.org/eSeries. If you submitted a question and it wasn't answered, visit the website. We'll post those answers there. If you would like more information on how to prepare for hurricanes or other potential disasters, visit the Pinellas County Emergency Management homepage at www.pinellascounty.org/emergency or call 727-464-3800. Join us again at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, July 6th for the next Prepare to Survive E-Series. For Pinellas County Communications, I'm Tom Iovino. Stay safe.